morning. You are listening to Readers and Writers with your hosts, James Hill and Athena Paris. I'm Amy Ravichandran, and today we're talking changing genres with Diann Boehm. So you guys, hey, how's everybody doing?
Doing good. How are you, Diann?
I'm doing great. It's lovely to be on your show. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for coming. We always love to have authors and guests, and we know each other through various means, but through Amy, and she's a publicist. She's our publicist. I think she's your publicist.
True.
And so we have talked many times, and I know that you have recently wrote a historical fiction based on your grandmother's life, and originally you were a children's author, right? Because I got a couple of your children's books for my grandchildren. They loved it.
Thank you.
You know, I get to read to the 5, well, wait a second, he's 8 now, but I get to read to the 5 and 6-year-olds every now and then. So
lovely.
your books are a hit among the children. But I'd like to talk to you now about that change, because you know I write in multiple genres, but you know, you have been writing children's books, and I really like to hear about how you decided to make the change and what's it like for you to write in different genres. And then we'll hear from Athena, who also just decided she was going to jump genres for a little while and go from romance to fantasy. So take it away, Diann.
All right. Again, thank you for having me. Yes, it was very interesting to change genres, or even to receive this message that I needed to do this, because I definitely believe that the angels inspire me, and I always want to give them credit. I was so my background is teaching, and with my children's books, I am invited author to be in lots of schools, all the way from preschool all the way up to high school. And a common theme that I discovered in the various countries that I've been in is, especially by the time kids were in high school, was how, depending on the country they were in, they didn't think about dreaming, because they were used to being kind of told what they were going to be or do. And that kind of shocked me, because I grew up thinking and being told by my family, you can be anything you want to be as long as you put your mind to it and you work really hard. And so I thought, goodness gracious, these kids need to be inspired. And I thought, what better way to do it than to write a snippet about my grandma Ruby, because if anyone could inspire anyone with their story, I would think she would be one. And so I decided to do historical fiction. Well, I had no idea what a beast I encountered. Oh my gosh, because I wanted it to be truthful, and before I could even really get the story, I knew what happened with grandma, but really to get the story across, I had to really dive into the 1920s. And then after studying the 1920s and trying to get the voice and the various things that happened, I realized something was missing. So then I needed to study the late 1800s, because I really wanted to understand what Ruby's parents, my great grandparents, whom I was fortunate enough to know my great grandma, and I thought, I need to know what life was like for them, and they each grew up in a different state. And especially in those days, states weren't all the same. There wasn't a McDonald's everywhere. You go to states today, as you know, James, and you wonder if you even left your home state, because there's just so many corporations, right? Where, like when I was growing up, there was mama and pop stores, and you always made sure you ate at the local diner. So I really studied those things, and it was really difficult to make the change, but it was a necessary change, and it's one I'm so grateful that I did, because I'm getting positive responses, and that's kind of long-winded, but that's what started it. So you can go from there with questions if you like.
Well, that's very interesting. And what I picked up on is the fact that since you say you've been in many different countries, American idea is you can be anything you want to be. That's not the
Right.
same in other people's country. You are whatever the government wants you to be or your family wants you to be. You know, you don't have we cherish our freedoms maybe too much because you see maybe to our own detriment sometimes.
Yeah.
But in other places they don't have that. And what places were you in that when you were teaching?
Not even just teaching, but as an author, I've I lived in the Philippines for 3 years and traveled. They have over 300 islands, and I traveled many of the islands with my husband, who was a diplomat at the time. And then I've traveled all over Europe. I stayed in those countries for a while. And I was in Saudi Arabia many, 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 many times. And one of the countries that I was in for a while was Denmark, which was incredible. So, and then of course, England, an awful lot. So I
Yeah.
saw a lot.
Let's bring in Athena because she's my editor and she's from South Africa. She's back in South Africa now. She was
Mhm.
stuck here for a year or more with the COVID. She wound up being stuck in America. She got a good look at what American life is like. I don't know. I don't know if she how much she enjoyed it, but she definitely got a different view and of America because she was here. And in that time, she decided she was going to switch genres too and start writing
Oh.
fantasies. She always liked fantasies, and that's what she tells me anyway. But Athena, so tell us how you decided to switch up, and what's it like being in South Africa or writing from, I would say, the culture of a South African, because you got many different cultures in South Africa.
Yeah, we have, we have 11 official languages, 2 white and 9 black. So it's up to you how many you learn and how many you want to use and all of that. So that is a conglomerate of ideas, of cultures, of myths and legends that you can borrow from. So it's a pot, full of things. Now, the great thing about South Africa is that we are a Western country, so we are part of the Western world, and we think pretty much the way the Western world thinks officially. And then you have the cultures where you've got the tribalisms, so the different tribes that follow the cultural, so they obey the tribe leader, the chief, and those things, but they're still allowed to make their own choices. So in that respect, we pretty much believe in that you can be anything you want to be as well. So we do have that. So that's not an only American belief in the world nowadays, as well, as we have all moved towards more openness, logic, and things like that. And as education and knowledge becomes more readily available to everybody, then we understand that boys and girls are the same. Boys and girls can become different things. If a boy wants to become a chef, why not? Or a ballet dancer. If a girl wants to be a pilot, why not? Those things don't get in the way anymore. And my reason for changing fantasy as well, it's because I like those mixes, the difference of ideas and creating my own ideas. So in other words, taking things that are real and giving it my own twist, so to speak. So creating my own culture, my own fantasy about different things. And obviously the market will be a different one, which is a question that I want to ask Diann. How do you feel that, how do you shift your marketing? Because who do you think is easier to please, the kids or the adults?
Excellent question. Well, the book is going to, a children's book is going to be purchased by the adults. So the
Usually.
explanation on the back is what's going to hopefully drive the parent to want to purchase the children's book. So I would say that the marketing is very similar in that sense because you're going after the adult who wants to put out
The
the
adult,
change.
yeah.
It's all about really the message you're going to get across. And if that message is something that a parent wants their child to receive, then I'm in good shape. And as well as this young adult book, which is really from 14 years old all the way up to adulthood, of course, that message is something, again, that marketing should be very similar. So,
Well, one thing I would
yay.
say is the cover, though, is much different because
Oh,
on a
definitely.
children's book, that cover
Yeah.
has to really attract the eye of the child because the parent's not looking at the cover to pick up the book. The kid is being drawn to that cover. And one of your covers is very interesting because it's a camel and the little boy is on the cover and everything. I'm going from memory because I actually gave that book to one of my grandchildren. But it was a very beautiful camel. And I think you do the artwork yourself, don't you?
On some of the books I do. And, James, that's an excellent point. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, the cover sells a book as far as I'm concerned, whether it's no matter what age, but a children's book obviously has to have the colors and the attractions to want the kid to even pick it up and look at it. The camel one was I co-illustrated with a friend of mine from Sri Lanka, which is another country that I've been in. And yeah, that was really fun to do.
Interesting. Now, when you were talking about writing historical fiction, I did a historical fantasy. And the reason why I went fantasy is because you don't have to do as much research. In fantasy, you can bend the truth a lot. You still have facts in there, but you can, twist those things around and bend them to your pleasure. Whereas if you're writing a historical fiction, it's the same as with science fiction, which I also write. You have to kind of like stick to some of the facts. Some of those facts are hard. With fantasy, it's pretty much the dates and places that you have to keep straight, and maybe some people in those dates and places. But with historical fiction, you really have to stick to the facts as they are, and you can write the story around those facts, and like you did around your grandmother and your great grandmother, but you have to kind of like stick to the facts of what was happening at that time, and you're not given the freedom of really twisting and blowing these things way out, as you are in fantasy, which is one of the reasons why I like writing fantasy, because it is
maybe I should switch.
There you go. You can write fantasy next. Yeah. There's no limit to which genre you can write in either. As an author, you can dabble in all of them if you like.
No, but I will share with you that I have so much more admiration for people like you, James, who write historical fantasy and just fantasy in general. That's a genre genre, and my hat's off to you. And after tackling this historical fiction, which I will have a second follow-up to Ruby, and the exciting thing is people are already requesting it, so I'm like, oh my gosh, it makes you feel so good, right?
Yes.
And I have 3 museums that backed me for the history, which was a great compliment, but it was tough. It was really, really tough. But I'm so proud of it. But it was tough because I made it tough. I wanted to make sure it was accurate. I mean, I went so far as my mama and I tried to figure out what the train path that my grandmother took. And then instead of taking the highways, we took all the back roads from Oklahoma to Missouri just to get a feel for what she might have seen. And that's how important it was to me to try to grasp that time period, because we're talking about in the 1900s. So obviously I wasn't born yet.
More years away. From that time. You are traveling backwards in time at that point. I had my family wanted me to do something about my great grandfather, uncle, something like that, who was in the Civil War. And they all
Oh,
say, you're the
fun.
writer, you should write his story. And I'm like, you know how much work that is?
Oh, but there's a short story there. You might need to do that, James. I might encourage you
I'm thinking about
offline.
it. I'm thinking about it, you know, but I know that I know the research that got to go into it.
Well, I tell you the secret. It's
But what's the
called a
secret?
Long Island iced tea or a margarita.
Oh,
I
yes.
like both of them.
You had me at that. Oh my God. Yes,
I
that
like
is
them
the
both. So yes,
secret.
okay.
Yeah.
Yes,
Lemonade,
I tell you
lemonade
what.
for children. Long
there you
Island iced
go.
tea for adults.
Yes, exactly. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation, and I love that you're not limited into writing into one genre. You can bounce around and write different, and it challenges you and makes you a better and stronger writer. So I hate to be the bad guy on the show, but that's my job.
Boo, Amy.
I
Boo,
know.
Amy.
I know. It is time. It's time to end the show. But Diann, thank you so much for coming and talking with us. And we cannot wait to read your book, for it to come out. You're an amazing
What's the
author.
title? What's the title?
It's out. It's made Amazon in the top hot list. Rise, a girl's struggle for more.
I love
Thank you.
it. We are so
Thanks.
excited. So thank you so much for coming and talking to us on Readers and Writers. And stay tuned, you guys, because next week we're going to be talking anthologies. Until then, bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.